Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician and activist. In the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast, we're going to be sharing a new message and a new audio podcast for the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast. I've been sharing the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast to inspire humanity to learn about Jesus Christ, Jehovah and Buddha. We're sharing the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast to inspire humanity to learn about faith, spirituality, fate and religion. And I've also been sharing the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast to inspire humanity to learn about helping other people, giving back and making a difference. Now, within the podcast and audio, we're going to be talking about a new very important message for Buddhism. So at the moment, within the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast, I've been sharing things in Buddhism because for me, I've found both Christianity and Buddhism in my religious life. I want to sort of encourage and share things within Buddhism, which I'm trying to do within this podcast today, and hopefully the message can inspire those people who want to learn about Buddhism and want to learn about spirituality and faith. So the message that I have for today is spiritual Magga. So we're going to explore this, and we're going to be talking about this today, and hopefully this podcast will help those listeners and viewers who want to learn more about faith, spirituality, fate and religion, learn more about, the Buddhist tradition and the Buddhist religion. So in this message we're going to be talking about spiritual Magga. So the first thing is, what is spiritual Magga? So it says on Google on the definition, Magga is the path or road, so which the Buddhists spiritually refer to the Noble Eightfold Path, the fourth noble truths. So Magga is basically the path and the road. So the question we have to ask ourselves is what is the path and the road to spiritual enlightenment and the Noble Eightfold Path. Now I'm going to explain this very briefly as well within this podcast and audio today. Now basically within faith, spirituality, fate and religion, it's important that we actually go on our path and go on our road. Now all human beings are destined to become something that you envision and want to become in life, right? Sometimes for different human beings that could involve a religious path or a spiritual path or a faithful path. Now within my understanding of just religion, faith, spirituality, there's different paths that lead to different roads within your life and different paths within your life, right? So what the Buddha was trying to teach within his messages were the eightfold path, right, which is the path to spiritual enlightenment and the ending of suffering, pain and adversity, which we normally call dukkha. So the spiritual enlightenment path is nirvana, which we are all trying to obtain. And then the path to eliminate that is the Eightfold Path, which the Buddha was basically talking about in his sermons and in his teaching. So the question is, if Magga is the path and the road, and how do we lead to the Noble Eightfold Path? Now I'm going to explain what the Noble Eightfold Path is to help those listeners and those viewers who really want to understand the Buddhist tradition and the religion. So it says here that the Eightfold Path has 8 paths to it, or 8 different core concepts, components to the actual path. So it says right view and understanding, number 1, right intention and resolution, number 2, number 3, right speech, number 4, right action, right 5, right livelihood, number 6, right effort, number 7, right mindfulness, and number 8, right concentration. So these are the eightfold paths within the Buddhist tradition, and this is what the Buddha was talking about in his sermons, right? So it's important, if we want to find the ending of suffering, pain, and adversities for ourselves and find Nirvana, which is basically enlightenment, we need to go on the Eightfold Path of discovering that. Now, it's important also to learn as well within Buddhist tradition as well that it's important that we do try to end suffering, pain and adversities for ourselves, which is dukkha, and all human beings have a form of dukkha that they've experienced in their lives. It could be distress, emotions, feelings, suffering, pain, adversity, challenges, difficulties. The list can go on with what human beings have faced within their lives in the suffering, pain, and adversity. But if we want to get on the spiritual path, the faithful path, the truthful path, and the religious path within our lives, then we need to basically understand what Magga is all about, the path and the road. Now, also within Buddhism, which I want to bring into this audio and podcast today, is that normally when we go on this path of faith, spirituality, faith and religion, which is so important in just all aspects of life, right? We need to find a path that's right for us. We need to find a road that's right for us. Now, obviously, we've understood within life there's so many things that's happened in life. You know, people have lost their lives, people have become divorced, there have been breakups, there's been wars, there's been corruption, there's been destruction, there's been negativity, there's been politics, it's just so many things that's happening within the world because, you know, the world is just going through so many different things. But it's so important that we understand what Magga is basically talking about, which is the path and the road. So within life, there is a path and a road to end suffering, pain, and adversity, which is the spiritual enlightenment, the Noble Eightfold Path. So if the Buddha has taught this to humanity, to try to encourage humanity to learn the Eightfold Path, but it's more important not just to learn the Eightfold Path, because a lot of people do know what it is, but do you live it? Do you do it? Have you developed the qualities of the Eightfold Path, which is the right view, understanding, the right intention, resolution, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, the right concentration? Now, if the path and the road of Magga leads to the Eightfold Path, we need to basically live the Eightfold Path within the Buddhist tradition, and within, you know, being either a Buddhist or a religious or faithful or spiritual person. Now, if we want to attain Nirvana, which is enlightenment, we need to find it for ourselves. Now, this is when things become very hard for human beings because of the suffering, pain and adversity we've gone through. Most human beings are very vulnerable, they're very depressed, they're very unhappy, they're still in suffering, pain and adversity, and of course they haven't obtained enlightenment or nirvana or haven't overcome their own suffering because they're still within it. So there's something within the Buddhist tradition that talks about the no-self. So I just want to bring this up briefly within Buddhism, which is the non-self, which the Buddha was also teaching about. And it says that the no-self is a foundational Buddhist doctrine asserting that no permanent or unchanging soul, essence of independent self exists within living beings or phenomena. So it's basically saying that the no-self is that. Obviously, basically what it's saying is the suffering, pain and adversity we go through as human beings is basically part of the self, but when we change into faith, spirituality, faith and religion, we discover there's no permanent, unchanging soul, essence of independent of self. So it's changing that, it's the no self, changing your suffering, pain, adversity, anxiety, stress, misery, depression, unhappiness, sadness, despair, challenges, difficulties, struggles, her feelings and emotions to the no self, because the no self, there's no permanent self. So as I've explained with spiritual Magga, that there is a path of ending suffering, pain and adversity, but we have to go on the journey of the Noble Eightfold Path, which the Buddha was basically talking about. Sahaja, which is the Buddha's name, right? So it's important that in our lives we find the ending of suffering, pain and adversity for ourselves. Now, this is where life gets very complicated for human beings and for individuals. They say, I do this within my life, I do that within my life, I've got this within my life, I've got that within my life, this is my situation, these are my circumstances, this is what I'm going through. It's all like, for some strange reason, most people are just stuck on suffering, pain and adversity. Most of the things they talk about is their suffering, pain and adversity, and it's like without and I've just learned this for myself, being within kind of the Buddhist tradition in my own way, that if you don't discover the Eightfold Path of ending suffering, pain and adversity, and you don't make an effort to do the Noble Eightfold Path, and you don't make an effort to basically say, do you know what, okay, I have gone through suffering, I have gone through pain, I have gone through anxiety, I have gone through stress, I have gone through depression, I have gone through adversities, but I want to do something about it, and I want to change that. I don't want my whole life to be suffering, pain and adversity, and I don't want to always be living with the fact that this is what I went through, this is what I was going through, this was my experiences, and living that type of life. So spiritual Magga, the path and the road, this is where I want to really get this message across in this podcast and audio today. Now, there is a certain thing that I've learned and I've learned this at a very young age, and I want to share this now within the podcast and the audio. Now, with spiritual Magga, now let me break it down a little bit more in the podcast and audio, right? So basically, what is it that human beings really need to understand this? What we really need is knowledge and wisdom. Without knowledge and wisdom, we can't do the Noble Eightfold Path. Without knowledge and wisdom, we can't basically end suffering, pain and adversity. And without the knowledge and wisdom, we will never know who we are, right? So people say, but knowledge and wisdom, do I just gain it from a book? Do I just gain it from a talk? Do I just gain it from friends and family? And the question to all of those answers is that it has to be learnt yourself, right? This is what the Buddha was basically trying to teach, right? The Buddha was basically trying to teach that if all human beings are going to go through suffering, pain and adversity anyway, because this is part of life and it's part of our existence, so we can't escape the impermanence of human beings, and basically, in other words, the suffering, pain and adversity that human beings go through. So the only thing we can do with the suffering, pain and adversity that we've gone through is transcend it, overcome it, end suffering, pain and adversity, find nirvana. Now, this is what I've learned from my whole journey, and I'm only quite young at the moment within my life, but this is what I've learned from my whole journey. And if there's a path and a road to end suffering, pain and adversity, then there also must be a path and a road to help other people, give back and make a difference. Now, I've explained this in audios and videos before, which I'm going to explain now because it's so important. Now, the Buddha, his teachings are for humanity. He's trying to inspire humanity to basically end suffering, pain and adversity, because he went on a journey of spiritual enlightenment. He meditated, he did mindfulness, he practiced the meditation of mindfulness, gained the spiritual enlightenment. And when I say he gained the spiritual enlightenment, the Buddha gained the spiritual enlightenment for himself first, before he started to teach it to others. So when I say there's a path and road to helping other people, what am I basically saying? you have to discover the enlightenment for yourself before you can teach and help other people. And that's the way how life works, because how can you help other people if you haven't learned things yourself? How can you help other people if you don't have knowledge and wisdom? How can you help other people if you wasn't spiritually changing? So what the Buddha's teaching in the Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path is that life will always have suffering, pain and adversity, which is just part of natural. It's natural, suffering, pain and adversity is very natural, but transcending it is what becomes difficult. So there's the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, and dukkha is the suffering of basically our life, right? So there's no human being that's lived within life that hasn't suffered something. It could, like I said earlier, it could be of a bereavement, it could be a divorce, it could be a breakup, it could be a loss of a job, a loss of a career, a loss of a business, it could be social issues, housing issues, financial issues, it could be relationship issues, it could be family issues. So the reality is that suffering, pain and adversity is always going to come in our lives, but what are we going to do about it? Are we going to transcend it to the no self? Are we going to transcend it to the Noble Eightfold Path? And are we going to go on this journey? And I've said in my podcasts and audios and books and videos already that going on the journey is what the most important thing is. And everyone has their path, everyone has their road, everyone has a different way of how they want to live their life. So the reality is this, that birth, life, death is basically part of life. So as a human being, we're all going to go through birth, life and death, which is going to happen whether you like it or not. If you're, if you're born into the world, then eventually you're going to pass away. So it's going to happen. I know it's scary. I know the thought of dying is a very horrible thing to realize, and it's very, very hard, and I understand how difficult this can be for so many human beings because they're still in the self, suffering, pain, adversity, and it's just an ongoing cycle that never changes. But you have to learn, you have to understand spiritual Magga, the path and the road, and go on our own journeys. Go on our own paths, right? And just before I finish with this podcast and audio today, there's just one more thing I want to mention. And I call this, it may not be part of the Buddhist tradition or religion, but it's part of something that I've learned that I want to share within this particular podcast and audio. I call it the 6 spiritual practices and the 7 levels of helping other people. So what are the 6 spiritual practices? Prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling and silence. What are the 7 levels of helping other people? Level 1, volunteering, the good level in helping other people. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment, the great level in helping other people. Level 3, business and entrepreneurship, the highest level in helping other people. Level 4, faith and spiritual, the spiritual levels in helping other people. Level 5, spiritually helping other people who help other people, the teaching levels in helping other people. Level 6, spiritually helping other people to spiritually change, the spiritual change levels in helping other people. And level 7, spiritually helping other people in spiritual truth, the spiritual enlightenment levels in helping other people. So as part of the Buddhist tradition and as part of the things that I've learned, Magga is the path and the road. What is the path and the road? Helping other people, giving back, making a difference and making a contribution. The path of the road is helping other people. So like I said, the path will always be different for every individual because we have to all find it in our own way, right? And all human beings need to find it in their own way. Every human being does. Every human being needs to, right? But when it comes to the suffering, the pain, the adversity, the challenges, the difficulties, that's something we're still going to have to learn. And why do we have to learn that? because it's always going to be a certain part of our lives which you can't avoid it. It's like, for example, it's like when you're born into the world, right? When you're born into the world, you don't know what suffering, pain and adversity you're going to experience. You don't know what life path or road you're going to go down. You don't know what job and career you're going to do. You don't know what business you're going to be involved in. You do not know. So as we go on this journey, as we find spiritual Magga, the path and the road, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, as we do the 6 spiritual practices and the 7 levels of helping other people, then slowly we find our own enlightenment, slowly we find our own truth, slowly we find our own inspiration, and slowly we find our own motivation to keep moving forward, to keep helping other people, to keep giving back, to make a certain difference and a contribution, and to end the dukkha, which is all part of all human beings, suffering, pain and adversity. So I'll finish my podcast and audio for this message today. Spiritual Magga is basically finding your own path and finding your own road. So if you do get to the point where you can overcome suffering, pain and adversity, which I can't tell a human being what it will be for you because each human being is different, slowly after that we can start doing the Noble Eightfold Path and learn more about the 4 Noble Truths. And then slowly after that, hopefully, if we get an opportunity to, 6 spiritual practices and 7 levels of helping other people. So I hope this helps those listeners who want to go on the journey of spiritual change and spiritual enlightenment. And just before we finish, spiritual change and spiritual enlightenment is what Jehovah, Jesus Christ and Buddha wants us to do within life. So we need to go on the journey, and all human beings will be different. So with the spiritual Magga, find your own path, find your own road. Hopefully you can follow it, hopefully you can do it, and let's see what happens, you know. And hopefully we can end that suffering, pain and adversity within our lives and find what the Buddha was basically talking about, nirvana, in life. You know, it'll be very important to find, and I hope we do as human beings. So thank you for listening, thank you for checking out the podcast and the audio as always. Listen